Welcome back, everyone. We're now going to be delving into immigration policy, so be patient with me. We're talking about a policy that's had a major impact here along the border. We are talking about Title 42. I've been reporting on Title 42 since last year. It's a public health order that was implemented under the Trump administration in the early days of the pandemic. Essentially, it allows border agents to rapidly expel migrants who are apprehended entering the country illegally. The Border Patrol has praised the policy, saying that it's allowed them to manage the surge of migrants at the border while allowing them to control the spread of coronavirus. Now, for the most part, the Biden administration has kept Title 42 in place, except when it comes to unaccompanied minors. Well, now Axios and other news outlets are reporting that the Biden administration will do away with Title 42 later this summer.
This administration removed Title 42 for unaccompanied children in February, and there was a direct correlation to the crisis. And this administration has talked about removing Title 42 indefinite. Well, guess what? If they do that, what they're going to see is the floodgates come wide open. So what worries me is the vice president comes down, she visits, and then all they do is they continue along this dangerous policy decisions. They remove Title 42, and they don't make things better. They actually make things worse. So I hope that she listens to not just me, but listens to experts, those that live and work along the border that can tell you right now Title 42 is working.
Dr. Austin Coker is an asylum law expert and a researcher at Syracuse University. He joins me now via Zoom. Austin, what are your thoughts on the possibility of Title 42 being eliminated?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think Title 42 at this point is probably the most significant holdover from the Trump administration in terms of a policy that's really affecting how migrants are treated along the border, how the border is being managed. You know, it's kind of a perplexing mixed bag, because certainly a lot of immigrant rights advocates and attorneys remain very concerned about the fact that Title 42 was put in place. It certainly appears, based on credible reporting, for political purposes, not simply public health purposes, that it was sort of used as an excuse to close the border. At the same time, the way that Title 42 has been put into practice is migrants who are coming across are essentially turned back and not, as they were before Title 42, our data certainly shows, prosecuted for unlawful entry, unlawful reentry, some of the other charges. So we've seen those charges really decline during Title 42. So oddly enough, it has closed the border, and yet at the same time, it also means that migrants are not being prosecuted criminally in federal court, so there haven't been criminal consequences for crossing. So we're in this weird position where it doesn't really seem to satisfy anyone's interest. And once Title 42 is lifted, which it will, as you said, it may well be lifted soon, we're likely to see an increase, maybe even a spike, in criminal prosecutions of migrants crossing the border unlawfully. So it doesn't seem like Title 42 has really solved anyone's concerns across the political spectrum, and probably created lots of new ones. I would just say, lastly, probably one of the most significant legal consequences of Title 42 is we have not been processing migrants who are requesting asylum through the normal process either. So I would argue that the administration wanting to fix asylum, and sort of represent themselves as different from the Trump administration, while at the very same time refusing to lift Title 42, refusing to process asylum applicants in the normal way, there's a little bit of an internal tension, maybe even a contradiction there. So if Title 42 is lifted, I think we'll see things essentially go back to the way that they were, before MPP and before Title 42. Doesn't solve all the problems, but at least it puts us back at a somewhat more routine, somewhat more normal situation.
But during an interview with Border Patrol Sector Chief Gloria Chavez last month, I asked her about Title 42, and she said it's been a very important policy for her agency.
Title 42 for us is a very effective tool right now because it does two very important things for us. It limits the spread of COVID-19 throughout the community, throughout my workforce, and even the people that we're detaining on that border. And then secondly, it keeps the capacity down at our Border Patrol facilities to include our central processing center, where all people that we come into contact with, that we make an encounter, that need to stay in custody, that's where they go to get processed. So those are the two benefits right now with Title 42. Because Robert, if Title 42 did not exist, the Border Patrol would need to process these individuals as we have done in the past, where we go, we encounter a person at the border, we make an identification that the person entered illegally, we determine their nationality, and then we put them in a van or a vehicle, transport them back to the Central Processing Center. They go to the Central Processing Center, it takes hours, sometimes days, depending on how many people we're backlogged with or that we're holding. It takes days for them to get released. In the meantime, what's happening at the Central Processing Center? More people are coming in and stacking up. More people are being held in these temporary holding cells, that it's becoming a little bit more difficult and more high risk, especially during a COVID-19 environment. So Title 42 for us has been very helpful, as it's kept our capacity levels down, because people that we encounter at the border are processed at the border immediately through mobile laptops, and then get transported in a vehicle to the nearest port of entry.
As for what the White House has to say about Title 42, a Biden administration official on Thursday said no decision has been made.
We know that we are increasing vaccination rates, and that there's going to be a day when the order is no longer needed, and we are planning for that day. I'll just note that we still are in the midst of a pandemic, and there are people coming to the border who come from high transition countries where the CDC has advised travelers to avoid. And because we process people in congregate settings, we're still working under COVID protocols that restrict the number of people in our facilities. So we are working very closely with the CDC and health experts at DHS to make that determination.
And we will be right back after this. There is so much to talk about, but we are out of time for this edition of Built in the Borderland. I hope to see you back here next week. Until then, I am Robert Olguin. Take care, everyone.